Hey, what's up? I just wanted to walk you guys through my process of creating my illustrated animated portrait of Niko Sasaki from Dead Boy Detective. So without further ado, here we go. This will be a two-part video. Part 1 will be the illustration, part 2 will be the animation. So yeah, that's about it. Here we go. So I start off and I do an entirely developed value comp before I ever go in colors. So I'm starting with a rough sketch, and then I'm just going in with like a basic painter oil paint brush that I downloaded for free off Brush Easy to do my first block in of values. Everything is rough at this point. I'm not trying to make it perfect. I'm just trying to get basic forms. Now I've transitioned to the Photoshop default soft round brush on a low opacity, and I'm using that to kind of smooth things out and even things out and get a more soft skin texture. And one thing with doing stuff like this, with doing the values, is that you have to go darker than you think you have to. And it's always, I think, even better to go a little bit too dark in the shadows than it is to have not enough contrast. For example, there I realized the bottom of her face wasn't dark enough, so I just did a quick brush over with a large brush to deepen that shadow. And that's another thing too. I think working with the biggest size brush possible is a good way to go about it, because if you get too messed up in the fine details, then the whole thing is gonna just look weird. I zoom in and out a lot for that same reason, because it's hard to get the big picture when you're just looking at a teeny tiny part of the composition. So I always make sure to zoom out to see how it looks from far away. Now with the hair, I think it's a good way to go to start with a value that's darker than the main color of the hair, because then once you add your lighter value, then you'll have that dimension between. Also for my animation, I wanted her to have black hair as well, so I just did a quick copy of the white hair layer and made it darker. To do the beanie, I lassoed out the shape of it so I wouldn't have to stay in the lines, and then made a clipping mask. And it's just super basic. I didn't put that much detail into it. It's not really an important eye-catching part of the illustration, so it doesn't need to be super detailed. But I did want her jacket to be realistic, so I used the same process I did for the rest of the illustration, where, you know, basic blocking of values with a big brush, and then further detailing things, deepening the shadows where they need to be deepened. I think it's so cool how things start to come together when you start adding those highlights. Adjusting the values on the hair where I realized that they needed to be a little different. And don't be afraid of doing super dark shadows. So to do colors, I use blending layers. This, I started with the hair, is just a soft light layer with the kind of orangey brown tone. And there's no like true science to this. I do the same method for the skin. You just kind of pick a color that looks right and adjust the opacity of the layer. I added some more warmth to her skin with this layer, then added in, you know, the red for the lips, which is kind of like a muted reddish brown. Coolness in the shadows, the blushy, lively tone of your face. And this makes especially coloring things that are a solid color super easy. It's similar to glazing, I guess, in painting. It's just the digital version of that. Because her jacket is blue, that light needed to be reflected, so I added some blue value into her hair. I also wanted a pink light source, so I added another soft light layer with just a bright neon pink, showing how the light of the environment is affecting her. So I wanted to recreate the really colorful, what do you call it? Colorful cloud of fun little things that floats around her head when she was infected with the dandelion sprites. So I just did a heart with the symmetry tool, scribbled some colors over it, and then used the Gaussian blur to make it into a finer gradient. The same thing with the rainbows. I'm just keeping it super simple. Use the same method with the star, use the symmetry tool and Gaussian blur to make the colors kind of blended and dreamy. I also added fog between the layers of hearts and stars and rainbows, and here you can see the final illustration, and the next part will be the animation. So tune into that if that's something you're interested in. Thanks!